Welcome to WO50 podcast, where women over 50 embody wisdom and wellness.
My name is Corrine, and I'm here with my best friend, Dr. Eddi Kenny. And today we talked about boundaries.
Oh boy.
What are they? What are boundaries? How do we get them? How do we know if we have them or don't have them?
What we can do about changing it if we don't, just some little tips, and we better get on
that. Boundaries are important. I think that it's something that happens hopefully naturally as we get older, but not necessarily. It's all about self-awareness.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
So if you think you have a problem with boundaries, or you could use more boundaries, if sometimes you find that your inner voice is saying no, but you find yes coming out of your mouth, then this is the podcast for you.
Yes.
Hey, Ed.
Hi, Ken. How you doing?
I was just going to say almost exactly the same tone. How you doing? I was just around my sister and mom, and my sister and I so many times would say exactly the same thing at exactly the same time with exactly the same tone. And you and I do that all the time as well.
I know. Some listeners are saying we act and sound like sisters. Are we sisters? I'm like, no, we're soul sisters.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, exactly. Because we've known each other a very long time.
Very long, and we're almost the same age. You're just a few months older, and
I'm 6 months older.
Yeah,
I'm 6 months more mature.
Okay. I should set boundaries around that.
You're so clever.
That's why we're segueing.
What are boundaries? What are they, and why are they important, and why do you need them? So do you want to hear my definition of boundaries, which is actually not mine? It's Brene Brown's definition of boundaries. She's
please,
like the queen.
Yes.
Hers is what is okay and not okay for me.
Perfect.
Keep it simple, right?
Yep.
And another thing that I learned from her, and if you want to learn more about boundaries on Brene Brown, you can either read or watch Atlas of the Heart on it's on HBO, and it's a 4-part series, and I highly recommend it if you've not seen it. So
yeah, it's great. We watched that together, and then I went out and I got her book, so I just love it as a reference book too.
I learned so much from her definition of words. And I love the monk story around boundaries, and I don't actually think it was her story. This is a story that I learned a long time ago. Yeah, because I've used it in coaching. I don't even remember who told this story, but so this is a story around boundaries. So there was 2 monks, and one of them, they're best friends, and one of them called the other one up and said, "Hey, I really want to go see this movie tonight. Will you come with me?" And the other monk said, "No, I'm not in the mood for a movie." And the first monk goes, "Oh, but I really want to see it. Would you come out?" And the other monk goes, No, I just don't really want to go to a movie tonight." And the other monk goes, "Oh, come on. If you do, just do this for me." And the second monk goes, "So let me get this right. You would rather me do what you want to do because you want to do it and go against my feelings of what I want to do." And that's really what the boundary is that it can be in certain situations, is the other person wanting you to do what they're in the mood for, what they want to do, rather than you following your own intuition.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Isn't that a good story?
It's a great story. It's a great story. I love her definition, because I think, even layering it deeper, it's boundaries is really, being really authentic with your likes and dislikes.
Yeah.
And I find as we get older, that's what she says, know what you like and don't like. And and even in, bantering back and forth with, like the monks did. So I know another story about monks, but no, one monk said to the other monk, "You're so thoughtless." And he said, "Thank you." That's a good one too. That's awesome. For another time.
That's awesome. I love that. So And then the other thing that Brene Brown found in her studies is that the people that have the most compassion for other people are also people with very strong boundaries.
That's
Because
great.
what happens when we don't have boundaries is we become resentful, and then we don't have compassion. That kind of cuts off the compassion.
Well, it's very healthy to have boundaries, and it's I don't think it's taught. When I listened to Brene and watched her language and how she worded everything, I just said, "Oh my gosh, every high school should listen and watch what she's doing and talking about, because it oh my gosh, it lays down so many common grounds for people to connect with." And I know myself growing up, yeah, and when I look back now and going into the 60s, getting
Your
ready to go in
70th
there.
decade, you mean? Your seventh decade?
Seventh? No, is it my seventh?
That's
No.
because when you're 10, when you turn 10,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're and 11, you're going into your second decade when you turn 11.
That's crazy. Isn't that crazy?
I know.
That's
My
just
brother sent
wow.
me a birthday card that said that, welcome to your seventh decade. I'm like, fuck you.
Bleep.
Oh
But
no,
that was said with love and lots of boundaries around it. Lots. But yeah, I think back, and I was one of those people where saying no was a challenge, and because I always felt, and there's a lot of people like me, that you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, and you do. Would, oh yeah, I can do that. That's okay. I don't mind. I can go to that movie. I don't, we weren't like the monk. So you didn't really have your voice, and doing a lot of work over the years around self-esteem and authenticity and our childhood, and just everybody's so different, how we're raised, you know um really having the talk about boundaries is really, really important,
yeah.
and being clear in the language around it, because yeah, saying no, that's one thing. When you say no and you mean it, and you're not full of guilt, and your emotions aren't all involved, and you're like, oh, I can do it. And then you say no, and you're like, no, I really can't do this, and you feel there's no guilt. There's a lot of work.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work, because what I hear from my coaching clients is that as my sister puts it, when you say yes, but you really mean no, you're saying no inside your mind, but what comes out of your mouth is yes.
Yeah.
And then that causes internal conflict. And then it causes resentment, as we're talking about, for the other person. And the other person, it's not their fault you said yes. Because
Yeah.
that's the thing, is like, you can't blame somebody. And that's where it gets really sticky, there's a really great book that I recommend to people called The Four Tendencies. And
Oh,
you and actually, I don't think you are. I'm an obliger. I think
I'm an upholder, I think.
you're an upholder. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're an
Yeah.
upholder.
Yeah.
So obligers take up most of the 35% of the population. And now we are a little bit of all of them. And I'm
Mhm.
definitely a healthy obliger. But what obligers are, if you're a kind of person that can't say no to people or has a hard time with boundaries, you're probably an obliger. And to read about them in The Four Tendencies is very helpful, because
Mhm.
they're the person that you always ask to look after your pets and to water your lawn when you're out of town, like, because they always say yes. And obligers, it's all about how you respond to your commitments, your outer commitments and your inner commitments. So an obliger will always, if there's an outer commitment where another person is involved, they'll always honor it. But if it's a commitment to themselves, like working out or eating healthy or going on a diet or whatever it is that you have to commit to yourself, you'll disappoint yourself all day long. That's
Wow.
an obliger. An
Mm.
upholder, which we think you are, is someone who honors both outer and inner commitments. So you honor commitments with other people, but you also honor your inner commitments. And I feel
Mhm.
like you're a little bit more, you can be an obliger in some ways, but I think you're a little bit more of an upholder, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're good. I love all these, references for things. There was one, um, what was it? The four emotional types. And it was all around boundaries. And there's the intellectual, the intense thinker, right? the intellectual, the empath, the emotional sponge, the rock, the strong and silent type. And then there's the gusher, or gusher, that's attuned always to emotions. So, when you look at which emotional type jumps at you, it's also going to be, you can reference it to how you set your boundaries in place.
Right.
You
How you
know,
feel like it can be helpful. I feel like these different categories that we're talking about, these different personality studies, that to understand yourself is to help you understand yourself so that you can understand where your weaknesses are, where your strengths are, and where you
your
need
vulnerable areas.
right,
Yeah.
where you need to show up with more boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you find yourself feeling resentful, you probably have a problem with boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing,
or anger.
Well, yeah. Well, I feel like resentment and anger are relatives.
Yeah. I love the weak emotional boundaries. Sometimes we're blaming others, we're
Yes.
complaining, like there's
Complaining and complaining. Yes.
yeah, complaining. Yeah, losing your temper. Like, there's lots of little things.
It's
So
it's like I was saying, I think it's important to go back to what the point that we made, that when your inside voice in your head says no and you say yes, and then you do the thing you want to do, like helping somebody move, or feeding their pet for a week, or whatever it is, if you that's your fault. You can't be mad at that person because they asked you, because
mhm.
you had an opportunity to say no. And so that's the biggest thing that people have a
It's true.
problem
Yeah.
with, is that they get angry at the other person for asking them, and the other person can ask you anything they want. You have 100% control of saying yes and no, when you become aware. Before
Yes.
you become aware, you don't think you just like, oh yeah, I can do that, and then you resent it, and it's bad for the relationship, it's bad for you, it's bad, it puts dissonance and bad frequency in the atmosphere. I mean, it's really
Yes.
important to be clear within yourself what's good for you. And also too, if you're a person that has a problem with that, you don't have to, like, I sit with things now, because my tendency is to say yes. Used to be, not anymore. Used to be to say yes to everything for everybody, because I'm an obliger. And then now that I'm older and hopefully wiser, I sit with things. Like, I had a guy email me from Facebook. He knows a friend of mine, and he's trying to put together this big speaker thing. Like, I don't know how many speakers he's going to have, like 30 main ones. And he's trying to create some kind of course. And he wanted me to do like a 10-minute talk on Zoom, and then he'd record it and have it in his course. It seemed like an easy thing to do, but I sat with it and sat with it. He sent me a couple emails, and I was like, you know what? It just does not feeling right to me. And I said no. And years past, I would have said yes, because I said yes to everything. So don't be afraid to sit with something for a bit to see how it feels in your body. Oh, and another, go ahead.
Yes. No, and well, often too, people are in predicaments where, it involves their children, right? And here we are over 50, and we have time to play, and our kids go, "Oh, can you look after the grandkids?" I know that happens to me personally. And we all have to have boundaries in place, and it's okay to say no. And I usually have something legitimate on the go when I when I do say no.
But you don't have to have something legitimate on the
That's
go.
right. That's
And I
true.
feel like most of the time, you're okay with that now. I feel like
Mhm.
you used to always have to have an excuse, either a made
Oh,
up one
yes.
or a real one, but you don't do that anymore. For the most part, you have a good boundary. It's like, no, it's just not right for me right now.
Yes. 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 And that's important. It's important. And it's important for, I think, everybody as we move forward. Because a lot of peeps that come into my clinic, and we sit down and we talk about different things, a lot of them, the boundary issue comes up quite a bit. And they're uncomfortable with saying no.
Yeah.
And some feel very manipulated, right? So, when you're
Ah,
feeling that way, you have no boundaries. So
yeah.
there's nothing in place when you're feeling like that. So that's really important. And then you feel taken advantage of, or, and then you feel bad, and they're your feelings. Having
And
boundaries in place just means you're being authentic to you.
yeah, because having feelings around being resentful for saying yes is different, because those are misplaced feelings, right? So when you're resentful to somebody because you've given too much to somebody, that's your issue. That's not their issue.
That's right.
Someone takes it, people can't take advantage of you unless you let them.
That's
And
right.
to me, that's very empowering. And that people
Yes.
don't come to that overnight. That is takes baby steps to get to. So if you're not understanding what I'm saying, I get it. And another great tool. So the one is sitting with it for a couple of days. And another great tool is thinking about if so say somebody asks you to do a speaking engagement or go to a play or make or do water their lawn or something 6 months from now, right? So it's not immediate. So you might just say yes. But what if you pretended that you had to do it that afternoon? Right? So if somebody asks you to do something in the future, you just say, okay, what would I say if it was that afternoon? And that helps you to really get clear.
And that shows, that's true, that shows you're honest and you're authentic with your word, and you're not saying yes or no, you're even thinking about it, which shows a lot of respect for them as well.
Yeah.
Like that mutual agreement. So that's respect for yourself, there's respect for them. You're not saying yes, you're not saying no, you're not, it can be, that's good. I'm gonna use that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you don't know. You could be in Spain in a villa somewhere in 6 months. Now you can't go because you promised but you promised you're going to water your neighbor's lawn.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And the thing is that, and the other person, like, you're not responsible for their disappointment. That's the thing, is that if they are disappointed when you say no, that is not your responsibility. That is 100% their responsibility. So if you are like, just like that monk story, it's like he was trying to make it clear, like, let's be honest, you would rather me do what you want to do than me follow my own intuition. And that's what happens when somebody's trying to talk you into something when you don't want to do it. And when you look at it that way, it helps to make it more clear. And so there are many cases where, especially if you're an obliger or a pushover or don't have boundaries, and if you start changing the contract, because that's what happens, is you have like usually a non-verbal contract with most people of how you are in the relationship, with your intimate relationships, with your parents, with everybody, right? And if you start to change that contract by starting to have boundaries, that's probably going to upset the other person.
But you have to have emotional and physical boundaries with everything.
Well, once you start to develop them, other people might be disappointed because you're changing the contract. You're changing how you are with them. Okay. Yes. And so the more clear you can be, you can't control if they get upset or not if you say no, but the more clear you can be, and some people are okay, will listen to your explanation, and some people won't. But if you just say, you know what, I've been saying yes to too many things lately, and I'm trying to have better boundaries and look after myself, and I hope you can find somebody else to do that. So hopefully explaining to them that you're changing the contract that you have between the two of you.
Yeah. That's you're now responsible for your own thoughts, feelings, and actions. Your boundaries are in place. You're responsible, not them.
Right. But you're also explaining to them that you're changing the contract between the two of you.
So be really direct and specific and
compassionate as well, saying, you know what, I know that I've said yes to you in the past, and I wish that I could say yes, but I noticed that I've got too much, I'm overextended lately. And
so you're understanding their feelings now as well.
Yeah.
But you're really honoring what you truly are feeling, what you need to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough. There's many layers to it. And especially if you've been a person that doesn't have boundary for a long time, and then you start changing, there is going to be some pushback. So you don't get the feedback right away, the positive feedback. But your body will feel better, but then you might have some guilt involved with but just notice what's theirs and what's yours.
Yeah, and it will change even with, your children are 10 or they're 20 or they're 30 or they're 40, they're 50 and you're 100. The boundaries keep changing. In a relationship, they keep changing. Even fresh new relationships, old relationships,
Well,
friendships.
yeah, because you want to take it from a case by case basis. It's like if you realize you're a kind of person that says yes to everything and you find yourself being resentful, then maybe take a look at that. And if you and
Yeah,
we change, you know, not just every decade, but we change every day.
we
And
do.
and
Yeah, we
honoring where
do.
you're at in the day of somebody asking you something, little things, big things, knowing what's yours, which is, you have total autonomy on whether you say yes or no.
Hmm.
And you don't have any control over how the other person reacts to your yes or no.
Yeah. It stops where you kind of know where your responsibility ends and theirs begins, right? That's the boundary. That what was it? What's the metaphors they use for it? Inbounds is
I don't know that.
acceptable. Inbounds, like in sports, boundary. I think that's where the
You're
word came
asking me.
from. Yeah, I'm thinking when Brene, when we were listening to Brene, I think it's coming back into my vault,
Well, you're a
my
sports person
brain.
and so is she, but I am
Yeah,
not.
so inbound and out of bounds. So inbound
Ah,
is acceptable and out of bounds is not acceptable, right? So there's the nice definition of the understanding boundary. So if it's acceptable, it feels right to you, you're responsible for your own actions.
and that's the key, is to you. And that's the other point I think it's important to make, is that your boundaries are different than mine, and my boundaries are different than yours.
Yep.
And my sister's boundaries are different than mine. Your sister's boundaries are different than yours. And that's
Mm.
all perfectly fine. We're all allowed to have what it is good for us. And that's what I think people don't understand. A lot of the people that I work with in coaching, it's like, it's kind of like the languages of love, the 5 love languages.
Mhm.
It's
Yep.
like when you first are introduced to the 5 love languages, you learn that we tend to expect from people or give to people what we like because that's all we know.
Mhm.
So it's like if you're a kind of person that loves to give gifts, then you're going to give your friends and your loved ones gifts because that's what you love to do. But that's not everybody's love language. And it's the same with boundaries. It's like we tend to expect people to have the same boundaries as us. I think that's why we get upset when people ask us things, but
Yeah.
you cannot get upset when somebody asks you something. They
No.
can ask what, even no matter how outlandish it seems. Like,
Yeah.
and
Even if they say no, even if they ask them for something and like say you wanted me to do something and I'm like, no. And I love Brene. She goes, remember, no is a complete sentence.
yes.
So how you respond to that, I shouldn't tag on a feeling to that. Because if I have a boundary in place and I go, no, but it also depends on what you ask me.
Well, and you can also have, like I said, compassion about it. You can be like, no, you don't have to explain yourself fully, but just that doesn't feel, that's what I usually say. No, is that doesn't feel right. That's not going to work for me.
Yeah.
Instead of just no,
Yeah.
it's just like, I'm sorry, that's not gonna work for me. That's not gonna work out this time, whatever it is.
Yeah. I know. I think back from years ago when, I would feel like I needed to fix and save everything. Oh, I can
Blame
help with that.
yourself.
Yeah. 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 Honestly. And the biggest thing is moving forward is the forgiveness to yourself
Yeah.
for you know, being hard on yourself for making those decisions and then going, "Oh my gosh, why didn't you apply that then?" And you can't. That's why the present moment is so important and moving forward and the letting go of stuff and story, you know?
And that's why it's key to remember that everybody's doing the best they can. So your best is different today than it was yesterday. Everybody's
Yes.
doing the best they can from where they're coming from. And I can't tell you how many times I've had arguments, discussions, debates with people over that point. And I think it was Brene that said that 50% of the people are going to think, believe, and agree that everybody's doing the best they can. And 50% of the people are going to say, no, I don't think everybody's doing the best that they can. But
I
then
love it when I love it when she also said, just because you've done the work doesn't mean everyone else has. I think she said that too.
Exactly.
And oh man, I have that written down in my like schedule book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause your best again is going to be different than everybody else's best. But
Well, you got to meet people where they are. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. We have so much to say on this topic, don't we? Meet people where they are is a good one too, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, if you can, but you can only meet people where you are.
Yeah.
Right. And some people are better at feeling into where others are at. Like I'm pretty good at it with my coaching, but I've seen other people better than me,
Oh gosh,
with
yeah.
it. And so,
Always.
so yeah, and what I was going to say is that Brene says that her husband said, I don't know if everybody's doing the best they can or not. All I know is that when I assume they're doing the best they can, I feel better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're the kind of person who doesn't think people are better, or you're not sure, then you can just say, okay, well, just maybe you could assume that they are. Because the thing is that
It's how you're
nobody
feeling.
does anything to be an asshole.
Well, what do you do if someone disrespects your boundaries or dishonors your boundaries? Like how do you want to take
Well,
it from
nobody
there?
can disrespect your boundaries. Nobody can disrespect you. People can do whatever they want. They can say whatever they want. They can do whatever they want. You have the opportunity to have a boundary when somebody says or does something that you don't like, or asks you something that you're uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
It's like, it has, none of it has anything to do with, like, when people are, like, say somebody asks you to do something outlandish, like they're going to go to Europe for 2 months and they want you to feed their dog for 2 months and go 3 times a day to walk their dog. Okay. It doesn't do you any good I mean, you can vent to your friend. You can call me up and say, hey, Corrine, you'll never guess what my neighbor has asked me to do. And we can laugh about it. Right.
Yeah.
But you don't want to really, I tell people, if you
take it personal.
Right. Because it's not personal. They're just asking you something.
Yeah. I know that's so cool. It's true. It is that yeah.
Yeah, we can laugh about it and think, oh my gosh, I can't believe they asked us. But my general rule of thumb, what I tell people is, if you have a fight with somebody, or somebody irks you, or somebody's whatever, an altercation, you're allowed to process it and tell it 1, maybe 2 times, maybe 3 times if you've got a large circle of friends. But after that, it's over and done. And the more you talk about it, the more energy you're giving it, and it's creating a construct, and then creates a bigger problem. Remember Sachi told the mashed potato story? Remember the mashed potato story?
Yes. I think you told that before, but tell it again. It's a good
I don't
story.
think we did, because we didn't put out our first 3. We're not going to put out our first 4 episodes. Yeah, no. Okay, so the mashed potato story is, say you go to Whole Foods and you order mashed potatoes with butter on them, and they're so good there. And then you go to Nancy, the teller, and you pay for your mashed potatoes. She weighs them, and she says, hey Eddie, how you doing today? And you're like, oh good, I'm just enjoy these mashed potatoes. And then you sit down and you eat them, and then you drive by Whole Foods the next day and you forgot your yogurt, and so you go into Whole Foods, get some yogurt. Nancy's still there, and you paying for your yogurt, and you say, hey Nancy, I also have to pay for the mashed potatoes yesterday. And Nancy's a little confused, but she's like, okay, I'll take her money. And then you leave with your yogurt, but you've paid for both the mashed potatoes and the yogurt from yesterday. Then you go back a few days later, and Nancy's had a few days off. She's on again, and you buy some broccoli. Oh, not broccoli, because you can't eat broccoli. So you buy some heads of lettuce. And then you say to Nancy, oh, can I also add on the mashed potatoes I had here last week? Nancy's very confused, but she adds on the mashed potatoes. So anyway, this happens over and over again. This is what happens when you tell a story over and over again. You have an incident that happens. Say you fall down and you hurt yourself, right? And then if you tell people about it, you continuing to hurt yourself over and over. Or a better example would be an emotional hurt. So say if somebody's hurt your feelings, they came along and said, you really sucked in the yoga class that you taught today. Maybe somebody said that to me, even though that's never happened. No, I'm just kidding. and then I talked to Eddi and I'm like, can't believe this person emailed me and said she hated my yoga class. And then I, call my sister and tell her. And then so I'm paying for it over and over again, but the incident only happens once.
That's right. Oh my goodness. How many times have we done that over the years in our 30s or 20s and 40s? And I remember one time I said something to you and you're like, you already told me that. I'm like, I did. And, and that's what's so good about having, friends that you've had a long time, because there's really beautiful boundaries there, isn't there?
Yep.
You
Yeah.
know,
Call
'cause
each other out on stuff.
yeah, and we will, and you'll say something, really, you still want to, dredge that up and talk about it. I'm like, I don't. Okay, good. Or I'll start something to you and then I'll go, nah, I don't even need to talk about that anymore. You're like, good. But you're willing to listen.
Yeah.
That's the honoring and the respect you have, and we have for each other. So that's really good. But it's beautiful that we have boundaries as well.
Yeah, so we have boundaries with each other and call each other out on stuff. And then also that's a boundary too within yourself of not telling the story over and over again. I do that with my clients all the time. It's like, okay, you told your best friend about it, you told me about it. Maybe you can tell one more and then it's done. Because there's always going to be more to talk about in life.
And every time you're telling somebody new about it, you're digging up the feelings again. But you already went through it once. You want to do it again and again and again.
Yep.
Oh, it's almost like staying, you don't mean to, and maybe you do, but it's like staying in the victim contract or the sabotage mode, or, we make these contracts sometimes with ourselves until we just go, I'm done with that.
Yeah.
Done with that.
Yeah.
So it's important. Yeah.
And the more aware we become that we're doing that and we stop doing that, the more present we can be in the moment.
Yeah.
For ourselves, for other people, for our life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important. Yeah. It's really important to set up healthy boundaries. Even, if someone says, well, wow, I don't think I have any boundaries. Well, what would I set in place? How do I set them up? What would you tell somebody to do?
Well, it's like I said, I gave 2 techniques earlier on. You either take a beat when somebody asks you something and don't answer until you feel into it, or pretend like it's something you have to do that afternoon. Would you want to say yes or no? So just really, so to me, it's just self-referral, listening to yourself. What about you?
Yeah. I would try and be really authentic, give it space, just give it space, like you said, and just start putting it into practice and recognizing it for yourself. If you're saying no, and then what that no means, and whether you're attaching a story onto it. Well, I can't do, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that because I have this and this and this and this. We always feel like we got to give a reason. Well, we don't have to give a reason.
No, a reason enough is it doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't feel right to me. That's not going to work for me. That's not explaining. That's just a more compassionate no.
Yes. And it's also, I think, if you keep the focus on what you need, because you might be getting ready to change your plans and accommodate what they're needing, but it's still not feeling right. It's still not a solid yes for you. So that no, hang on to it. Just hang on to it like an icicle and just go, is it going to melt, or is it a solid no? Because when you're focusing on your needs without, oh, I'm going to make that person sad, or they're going to be upset about that, I'm going to hear about that now for how many days. Once we let all those thoughts fall away, because that's all they are, they're just thoughts, and we don't want to get emotions from those thoughts. We want to keep with the emotion of the answer to the question that we're putting the boundary around, that's comfortable and will it's speaking volumes, because it's also now showing respect not only for yourself, it's huge for them as well.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. I tell people that when you follow your own heart, it's a natural law that it's good for you, but it's also good for them too. Even if they fight it, even if they don't like it, it's always good for everybody in the end, I find.
Yes.
I just have seen that over the years, from being able to tune into myself and figure out what my answers are for different situations, and trusting that it's best for them too. Even, like I said, even if they get upset about it and they say no, because we teach people how to treat us. We teach people, so if somebody's used to you saying yes all the time, and all of a sudden you start saying no, they're going to be upset. Like I said, there's that nonverbal contract that you have with them, right?
Yes.
So, but that'll change over time. You just have to continue to say no, and they'll get used to it. And so you teach people how to treat you.
It's like the 4 agreements. Be authentic with your word, right? So it's even, don't take anything personal. You got to focus on your needs. Really, that's not one of the agreements.
That's not sure to rewrite the book. Don't take anything personally. Always do your best. Be impeccable with your word. Don't assume. Don't make assumptions.
Don't make assumptions.
Don't make assumptions.
Yes.
4 agreements. Don Miguel.
I just saw a little painting that someone did, and it said there was 2 little birds snuggled into each other, and it said, "Be impeccable with your chirp." It's just so cute.
And on that note,
yes,
I think we'll wind it down now, because that was a really deep dive into boundaries for sure. I mean, we did reference Brene Brown a lot, because she is the queen of vulnerability and boundaries. If you have not listened to her, or you can always go back and listen. I always tell people, especially my clients, they'll say something and I'm like, that's Brene Brown 101. You might want to go back and listen to that again.
Oh, she's great with boundaries, with codependency, with just what it all means, overwhelm, anxiety, all those things. Those are just, we love her. Yeah. Shout out to Brene.
All right, Ed. Thank you so much. As always, it was a wonderful conversation. I love you.
Thank you. Love you too.
Until we meet again,
be authentic. Be kind.
Have boundaries. Be kind. Have boundaries.
Be you. I remember. Welcome to WO50, Women Over 50. Oh my.